I'm very happy he came back to share his talent, his wit, his knowledge with us. And I'm not going to say any more because I might spoil the whole thing, right, David? And I want David to come up here, and that's more important for all of you. This is very special. I do love him. Come. David Wolfe, thank you.
Thank you, Alice. I'm fine. I'm delighted to be back here again. I really, really enjoy coming to FIT, and I'm always jealous of all of you because I did not go to FIT. And I'm also jealous because you're young and I'm old. But that's a whole different subject. We'll talk a little bit more about that. What I'm going to share with you today is the kind of presentation that I spend my life traveling the world giving to retailers, designers, fabric people, advertising people, and interestingly enough, also to financial analysts. This is a whole new group, new sector for me, because for a long time, I just talked to fashion people, and I thought everybody, looked fabulous and trendy, until I started talking to Merrill Lynch and Goldman Sachs and people like that, and then I discovered there are a whole bunch of people out there who actually do wear navy blue suits and white shirts and ties, and those are the girls. So what I'm going to show you today is a presentation that I hope will encourage you to think some bigger picture stories about fashion. I know you all have a passion about fashion, but I think if you're going to be a success in this industry, you have to spread your wings and spread your interests and really understand what's going on in the world, because to me, the world is fashion. The accepted definition of fashion is that it's a reflection of the society that wears it. So if you understand what's going on in the world, you know why people look the way they do. Okay, if I can have the lights down, we'll start and begin what I always think of as my annual State of Style speech. I'm kind of jealous of the president all the time because he gets to do a State of the Union address every year, so I always do a State of Style address. And what we're going to talk about is a focus on spring 2007, because that's where most of the industry is thinking right now, but so many of the ideas I'll be talking about have longer legs, longer lifespans, because in fashion we no longer think of the world of fashion progressing season by season the way it used to. It used to be wonderful. We'd start out each season with a blank slate. It was as if everybody in the world was naked and we were going to start from scratch. Well, that isn't how it works anymore. It's really very evolutionary. So some of the ideas I'm going to talk to you about are ideas that have been formulating and gaining momentum over the last few years. Some of them hopefully will be brand new ideas. So in effect, what we're looking at now is the big picture. What influences people to buy, what influences people to present themselves to the world in a certain way. Well, one thing we know for certain is that fashion is in a fast-forward state at the moment. Everything is going faster and faster and faster. But the question is, where is fashion going? I think that's what we have to ask. It doesn't do any good to go racing off unless you know where you're going. One of the problems of going faster and faster is that you don't have time to think. And so much of what seems to be going on in fashion today seems to lack thought to me. There's too much happening, too much information, too many trends, too many colors, too many celebrities, too much. We are in the fashion industry, so we can probably all digest all of this. You all care about fashion, so you can look at a fashion magazine and come to grips with it. I just walked by the newsstand and saw the cover of the new Harper's Bazaar, and I was nearly sick. You know what it says? 730 new ideas. Excuse me? 730 new ideas? Okay, so imagine a civilian, somebody out there, a real shopper who isn't in the business thinking, oh my God, how am I going to cope with 730 ideas? Well, these are all pages from one issue of a fashion magazine, and it's just the beginning, because then come the trends. So just imagine that lady out there, thinking she's going to go shopping, and she opens this page and she says, oh, gee, I think I should look like a 60s socialite, or maybe Japanese military, or should I buy a shirtwaist dress? Maybe I should be into arts and crafts. How about baby doll? How about schoolgirl? Well, you get the idea. Usually what happens is they're just so exhausted, they stay home, and watch, QVC, buy a pair of leggings. So I think, we have to start thinking how we're going to slow things down. Maybe there should be a fast-forward motion that stops once in a while. One of my problems, and something that I'm still learning, because the great thing about being in the fashion industry, believe me, is that you keep on learning all the time, because if you don't, you'll be unemployed, and that's a good bit of advice. So timing is of the essence. And maybe sometimes we not only are going too fast, maybe sometimes we shouldn't even be going at all. Maybe sometimes we should be standing still, or maybe even going backwards in order to make money, because that is the point of being in the fashion industry. Here's an example of a lesson I learned last summer. This is a scene that took place on the French Riviera in the tiny little town of Saint-Tropez, which I visit every summer for a couple of weeks to check out the trends. It's a dirty job, but someone has to do it. So every summer I schlep off to the French Riviera, drink a lot of wine, get a great suntan, and pay attention to what people are wearing there. Because the entire fashion industry looks at Saint-Tropez only for a little window of time every summer, though. You have to be there just the right weekends when the trendy people from Paris go to the Riviera to buy their summer wardrobes. Now, this sounds like a stupid idea, but here's why it happens. French people all go on holiday for the month of August. When you go to Paris, it's like a ghost town. Most of the little boutiques are closed. The big department stores stay open, but there's nothing in them except tourists. And all of the boutiques close. So the smart French stores don't buy a lot of summer merchandise because they know they're going to be closed for an entire month. So if you live in Paris and you want new summer clothes, what you do is pop down to the Riviera to buy your clothes for next summer. And that's what the fashion industry, me included, goes to see. And so before I went, of course, I always prepare for a trip, and everybody on 7th Avenue told me, well, you're not going to see any gypsy skirts. The gypsy skirts are over. We've been selling them now for, 3 or 4 days. So, the trend must be over. Well, surprise, surprise, I got to Saint-Tropez, and this is what I saw. Everybody was buying more and more and more gypsy skirts. So that was a really good lesson to me, and a lesson that I think America needs to learn in general. We jump on a trend very quickly, but we jump off it too quickly. So sometimes we jump off it and then think we're reviving it, but it's still the same trend. So the gypsy skirt is a good example. I mean, if you want a gypsy skirt now, you'll have a hard time finding one because we are finished with it. But in Europe, they're starting to reinvent the gypsy skirt. I don't think we should stop selling gypsy skirts until every single person in America is wearing a gypsy skirt. I think maybe every single person is wearing a gypsy skirt, so maybe we should finally move on a little. We should not stop something that's going on. The decade of decoration. Believe me, no matter what the fashion industry tells you, decoration is not dead. Embellishment is not ending. When fashion history is written about the first decade of the 21st century, it's going to be called the decade of decoration. There has never been so much embellishment, so much crap put on everything for decades. And it's going to go on. We should not stop it. What we have to do is just find a way to keep it fresh as long as the consumer wants it. And one way that that's happening is to move the boho look south of the border. That's happening big time in a fresh arts and crafts kind of way. It's starting first in Europe, believe it or not. In Europe right now, the trend is toward the Americas. Not just North America, but South America, Central America too. So European embellishment is now looking country and Western, it's looking Latin American, it's looking very, very important, Mexican. In fact, I just got a report from our European trend analyst. Guess what the hottest trend is in very trendy East Berlin? This is what I love about getting trend reports from a good trend spotter. Mexican wrestling. Do you even know what Mexican wrestling looks like? They wear those masks over their heads and capes, and those motifs are now on all the hot T-shirts in East Berlin. So, you're going to see that cross over here, so watch out for it. When you think about decoration, look at things like this. This looks like, something, you might have crossed the border to Tijuana and bought as souvenirs, but these were some of the best-selling sportswear items in Milan last month. So if the chic Milanese are buying these Mexican embroidery things that look like Mexican wedding dresses and Mexican wedding shirts, you can bet your bottom dollar that this is exploring a new way to do decoration. We're in a big print cycle at the moment, and the reason for that is prints are decorative visually, even though it's not applied decoration. We want a lot of eye candy, a lot of bang for our fashion buck, and that's one reason that prints are so important. And they've got to be unusual. They've got to be new prints, like that one right there in the middle from Miuccia Prada. That is a sort of 80s Memphis Milanese kind of motif, and I think you'll be seeing more of those. Color in itself is decorative, and even though American fashion keeps trying to say that black is the beginning and the end, season after season, it's only the end. Color is what's happening. And again, we look to Europe. I'm sorry, but the Europeans are more sensitive to fashion direction than Americans. They are first off the base. They are a heartbeat ahead of where we are. I don't know why, but that's just the way it's always been, so believe it. And right now, color is coming on strong in the trendy part of European merchandising. In fact, happiness is the new hip in America, in Europe, in Barcelona, in Milan, in Madrid, in Berlin, where the street kids, the cool kids, are starting to wear bright colors in wild combinations and strange prints. It kind of looks like the circus came to town. And that's very much different than what is happening here, where cool is going back to goth. So it's going to be interesting to see those two forces fighting each other. Certainly, accessories are part of our urge for decoration. After all, Eve's fig leaf was the very first accessory, and we haven't stopped since then. The great thing about accessories is that there are so many classifications that season after season we can just trade around our interest. And right now, belts are where it's at, either at the waist or at the hip. Belts are really the big deal. Handbags continue to be a great novelty item that just goes from strength to strength. Sometimes instead of going fast forward or even stopping, we go back. And that's not a bad idea. We've been doing that for a while. I think we go back to retro fashion again and again because we are very frightened as a society. So we go back to avoid the shock of the new. There's so much newness in our world when you think about it, newness that we can't avoid, that we embrace, that we like. You know, your new iPod, every new electronic gadget. You know, we love that stuff. So maybe in our personal wardrobes, that's a chance to kind of, catch our breath a little bit and wear something that's familiar and reassuring, that isn't challenging with its newness. Maybe that's why classics continue to be important. And people like Ralph Lauren build empires on this. Tommy Hilfiger tries. Jack and Kate Spade are building an empire currently by exploiting these retro classics from the late 50s, the early 1960s. And you might ask yourself, well, why is that period, why does it continue to resonate with Americans over and over and over? And one advantage of being as old as I am is that I was there during the late 50s and early 60s, and I can tell you that was a glorious time for America. We really ruled the globe. Our economy was strong then. Everything was Americanized. And so we're kind of reassured by pretending that America is still number one when we wear a polo shirt. I'm amused that some of the hottest items coming into fashion are the most boring. We haven't seen them for such a long time that they look exciting. The shirtwaist dress is about to stage a comeback. We're in a great dress period starting next season. The Chanel suit, not one that has been tricked up by Karl Lagerfeld, but a real Chanel suit. And just a simple skirt and blouse. How do you avoid the shock of the new? Well, sometimes you just nudge something along a little bit. It doesn't have to be completely reinvented. We've been selling stripes like fury, and they are continuing. And one way to make them look fresh is not to turn stripes into polka dots, but simply to recolor them, respace them. Because white is so important right now. Almost any stripe that you add white to looks fresh. And right now, black and white stripes are enormously important in Europe, crossing over the Atlantic as we speak. In London, they're calling them the Debbie Harry stripes, kind of cashing in on the 80s retro feeling. But it's very much that idea of freshening a trend that's already there. Fail-safe black certainly avoids the shock of the new, but boy, can it be boring. I remember black, endless black, for like 25 years. I was there in Paris early in the 80s when the Japanese designers first came to town. People like Rei Kawakubo and Issey Miyake and Yohji Yamamoto, they came with their entire black collections to Paris. And at first, the fashion industry did not understand what the hell was going on. And everybody said, oh my God, this is terrible, terrible. American women will never wear black. Well, they were wrong, of course. American women did wear black and went on wearing black, 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 and more black for about 25 years. So I think, it's time to move on. Black is still good, of course. Some things should always be black, like the little black dress has to be black. A tuxedo is best when it's black. Like, I'm sure, you watched the Oscars last night. I hope you did, because it's a great free fashion show, and there were too many black dresses, and too many ugly black dresses, too. Just my opinion. Okay, white. It's the antithesis of black, of course, and white is now about to take the same kind of grip on fashion that black has had for a long time. White, head to toe, off-white. The newest way to wear white is white with ivory, white with parchment, white with beige, white with ecru, so that you're wearing shades of white and off-white together. And of course, if you put the two things together, you've got a no-brainer, fail-safe success story. Black and white never fails to sell, and as long as it's there, it's a wonderful idea. You can see it, of course, in prints and patterns and stripes, but think about the appeal to a woman who has a wardrobe that has a lot of black pieces in it, and all she has to do is add one piece of white and start mixing it in with all those black pieces, and she's got a whole new look. Cliched femininity avoids the shock of the new. There are some very, very girly clothes out there. Unfortunately, there are some women who are too old to wear these girly, girly clothes, and they are wearing them anyway. You have to be real careful with ruffles and bows if you reach a certain age. One or two, fine, but too many. Did you ever see the movie Whatever Happened to Baby Jane? If you know that movie, you'll know that old ladies should not wear ruffles. But this is also a sign that we are nervous about life on our planet and life in our country these days. So if we step back into very, very cliched roles, gender roles, then somehow, we feel more reassured. It's kind of like, if girls and women look like girls and women and men look like men, everything will turn out okay. Well, I'm not sure about that, but it moves merchandise, so why not? Not only do we have cliched femininity, but we also have cliched masculinity. Goodbye, Mr. Metrosexual. It is over for, the Fab Four, with the queer eye for the straight guy. They're just gone. So now we want men to look like men. That's why military is so important right now. We want men to look like soldiers, men to look like tough firemen, men to look like tough cowboys. Although, let's face it, those two guys on Brokeback Mountain kind of softened the cowboy image for most of us, a little bit. Antiques also avoid the shock of the new because they're old, they're familiar. It's one reason that we keep looking back into the past for romantic ideas. It's one reason that you should go to every fashion exhibition at a museum that you possibly can. You have a wonderful museum right here. Of course, you should go to the Met, you should go to the Cooper Hewitt. Look at the past. Vivienne Westwood, one of my favorite designers, totally crazy, but she said the most wonderful thing to me once. She said, it's all right to steal ideas from the past because that's where all the best ideas are stored for us. And I think that's true, and you have to be very careful, though, about how much you steal. This romantic, Victorian, Edwardian look that, is important right now is not new. We go back to that every couple of years. And sometimes, it's a good idea to look back and see how we did it to make sure we don't do it that way again. Like this. I don't know if you recognize a very young Donna Karan and her best friend Barbara Streisand doing the romantic antique look the last time it was around. This is a perfect visualization of the term fashion victim, don't you think? Right now, the antique looks that are out there are a little bit more casual, very, very influenced by antique lingerie, lots and lots of lace and ribbons and bows and frills, and kind of, relaxed, sexy look. That's one reason that we're in such an important lace cycle. Lace, 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 and more lace. I hope you all know who Diana Vreeland was. If not, there are a couple great books about her. You should know, read them. They're funny, they're fun. She was a great editor at Vogue magazine, and then when she got dumped by Vogue, she went to the Metropolitan Museum and turned the Costume Institute there into a phenomenal success with her flamboyant parties and exhibitions. They weren't always historically accurate, but boy, were they wonderful. She was a great editor, and I don't think we have any great editors in the media today. Editor, what does that mean? It means you're supposed to select not 730 great ideas, but one great idea. That's what was so wonderful about Diana Vreeland. She could go to the Paris collections, see the same load of crap that's there every year, a lot of ideas, and she would come back and she would issue a dictate, and she would come back and say something like, "It is the year of the red belt. That's all you need to know, a red belt." And that was wonderful news for the consumer. They got some clear direction. So I always try to use her as my role model. And I came back from the collections and I said, the one thing you need to know is lace. Just do lace, shut up and leave. And and a lot of my clients, people I work with, like that kind of pinpointing of tell me the great things, don't tell me everything. So I encourage you to learn how to edit. Go on style.com and look at the collections and then try to pick out 2 or 3 great ideas. It's fun, it's challenging, and it's educational. Let's talk about elegance for a minute. Elegance is something that we don't have a lot of in fashion today because we don't have a lot of it in the world today. And, we're moving back toward it. Last night, a lot of the women at the Academy Awards kind of almost looked elegant. Who did you like the best? I liked Uma Thurman's dress the best. And I liked her hair. I liked everything about her. I also liked J-Lo. I thought J-Lo looked pretty good. I thought Sandra Bullock looked like crap, but okay, you gotta make these opinions. Don't be afraid to form an opinion. In my opinion, I think Fred Astaire was probably the most elegantly dressed man that ever existed on this planet. So cool. So I tried to find some examples of people today who are elegant, and I couldn't. But then I remembered seeing this ad in the magazines at Christmas time. Do you remember seeing this ad? And I was so surprised. I thought, oh my God, look, they're selling fashion there, and it looks like a lady and a gentleman. Well, for one thing, I was so surprised to see a model with her legs together. I mean, I think, how long has it been since you have seen a picture of a model with her legs together? I don't know how they stand up. I think they're, okay. So then I found this picture. This is not an old picture. This looks like a vintage picture, but it's not. This is Lulu Guinness, the European handbag and accessory designer, photographed in her home in London, and she looks like a lady. Look, even Madonna can look like a lady sometimes. She cleans up very well, you have to admit. There she is photographed in her very, very posh English country home that used to belong to Cecil Beaton. If you don't know who Cecil Beaton is, get a book. Cecil Beaton was a great photographer, photographed the royal family, lots of fashions and stuff. You gotta study fashion history, please. Get interested in it. It will illuminate your life and inspire you. Sometimes we have to move slowly, and that's something I'm encouraging my clients to do right now, and boy is it hard, because they are wanting minimalism. We all know that minimalism has to be the next big thing, because now we are in such an embellished, decorated phase. So the fashion pendulum does swing back and forth. The trick is, though, get the timing right. Oscar de la Renta once said something to me that I will never forget. I asked him, about how fashion happens, and he said, it's so simple. He said, we're working with the human body, and all we can do is go up and down, in and out, up and down, in and out, up and down, in and out. That is so true. The trick is, when do you do it? Do you go from one extreme to the other very quickly, or do you move gradually? Well, I think even though we know that minimalism is coming, we cannot do it in an extreme way, because I think we have scores of people out there who just love stuff, and they're going to feel deprived if we take it away from them all at once. But it's definitely where we're going, and we have to think about that. We are moving toward minimalism in a very, very important way in architecture and interior design, and it looks very right and very fresh after a long, long period of over-decorated rooms. This is as simple as an environment gets. I'm fascinated by this. This is a pod that you live in. Now, none of you are going to want it because it has no closets, so it's out of the question for all you. But what you do is you crawl into it and you close the door and you turn on that computer screen, and that's just your entire world. Kind of scary, but exciting, don't you think? And this is the wardrobe equivalent of that same thought. This is minimalism. It's the opposite of where we are at now, and where we are at now is maximalism, a word I happened to have invented, by the way. Okay, so this means the absence of color, the absence of print, the absence of pattern, the absence of accessories. It looks very right to me right now. It looks very, very dramatic. But I think most people won't get it right now. It's also very bad for the fashion industry because it means you're not selling the handbags, you're not selling the jewelry, you're not selling all the layers. So this is going to be a tricky call. So we have to figure out how to make minimalism look exciting this time, because last time around it nearly killed the fashion industry. That was the beginning of the 90s when everything was black and it looked like it was inside out because it was deconstructed. Women walked around with dirty hair, bare legs, and flip-flops and called it fashion. It slowed the industry to a death crawl. So what we want to do this time, even though we know minimalism is coming, is goose it. Keep it exciting. And here's one way to do it. Shape. Shape will be so important. The last time around, shape wasn't there. And shape has always been important. Of course, there it is on the left from Cristobal Balenciaga, the great Paris couturier. In the center, that's Yohji Yamamoto at the Louvre Museum in Paris. On the right there, you're seeing a modern interpretation of strong shapes. Not just clothes, but strong shapes, accessories too. These are my favorite shoes in the world right now. They're by Robert Clergerie in Paris, and they look like they're molded of suede on a molded sole and heel. Now, shape is not, difficult to sell. It's how we sell new automobiles every year, for goodness sake, by redesigning the shape, rethinking the shape, and that's what we're going to do to clothes. Color is also a way that we can make minimalism look exciting, and it's why minimalism worked before, late in the 50s, early in the 60s. When Jackie Kennedy was in the White House as First Lady, she wore very, very simple, beautiful clothes, and her wardrobe went on exhibition, on tour around the world a few years ago. I don't know if any of you were around to see that, but the thing that surprised every fashion person that I talked to was how much color she wore, because we were used to seeing all those iconic photographs of Jackie and Jack in the White House, but they were always black and white photographs. When we saw the clothes, her clothes were daffodil yellow, cobalt blue, hot pink, vivid violet. They were just wonderful, and that helped make them look exciting. So we're starting to see some creative use of color, even though, Jackie wouldn't be caught dead in any of these things, but interesting color combinations. We have to re-educate our eye to think more creatively about color than we have. In the past decade, black has been so important that all you've had to do was wear a color with black and you were okay. But when you start wearing color with color, it takes a certain amount of confidence and knowledge to be able to do it creatively. Texture is also very, very important to keep minimalism looking exciting. Whether you're designing a building that's very simple in line or designing an outfit that's simple in line, texture can make it exciting. At the Metropolitan Museum recently, there was this wonderful, wonderful exhibition, One Woman's Wardrobe, an extraordinary fashion lady. She wore very, very simple clothes in great colors, and she wore dynamite accessories. So I always include these pictures in my presentation to inspire people to think, all right, if the clothes are simple and bold, we need big, bold, artisanal, ethnic accessories to go with those clothes. How are we going to get there? Well, here's an example. Here's where we are at right now, and this is still going strong. Don't get the idea it's over. Jazzy handbags. They have everything but the kitchen sink attached to them. Bells, whistles, flashing lights. Everything makes them exciting and fun. But we're starting to see a movement toward gradually cleaning them up a little. This is one of the latest Dior bags, not the best-selling one at the moment. The best-selling one at the moment has 1,400 buckles on it. This has one buckle, and that's the movement as we're going to see this gradual cleanup campaign begin. Some things we have to push to the max, like luxury. We are a very greedy society. We want more, and we want to show off that we have more. So that's one reason that luxury is so very, very important to fashion. This is how the last fourth quarter of business looked around the world last year. So much glitter, glitz, bling that it was unbelievable, and it was unbelievably successful. So I don't think people are going to get over that very quickly. They still have the hunger. If we added up the price of all the things you are looking at on the screen right now, you would be astonished. It just amazes me that there are people who could pay $175,000 for a watch, and they do it. Trick is find one of them and marry them, please. That's just in case you don't become a world-famous designer. Luxury brands are something that we all think about, so important in our world. And a few years ago, we had an artificial inflationary period when there were a lot of people who tried to be luxury brands. Well, now that has contracted again to the true luxury brands. If you go to Paris, see the new Louis Vuitton shop on the Champs-Élysées. It's a cathedral that people go in to worship luxury. These are the key luxury brands, and the reason they are so important is not because they are just so expensive and you can show off that you've bought them, but they really do deliver wonderful design and they deliver quality workmanship. That is what really makes them luxury brands. We can see this hunger for luxury affecting different sectors of the industry. For example, right now, the fine jewelry business is growing by leaps and bounds. One of the things I enjoy doing is going around and speaking to various groups. And just last week, I was in Dallas speaking to the CEOs at a summit meeting for fine jewelry and diamond merchants. And it was a very, very exciting learning experience for me to hear what's going on in that world. And the entire world of fine jewelry is exploding right now. Okay, so if you can't afford, $200,000 for a watch, how do you express luxury? Well, one way a lot of people are expressing it is wearing metallics. And that's interesting, and that has changed from the way it used to be a few years ago when you could only sell metallic fashion for, about a 2-week period just before Christmas. Well, now metallics are a year-round story. And so because they are year-round, they are subject to seasonal changes. And right now, for example, platinum is more important than silver. Old gold and rose gold and bronze are more important than shiny gold. So muted metallics are the next step. Glitter, 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 bling, bling, bling. It is not over. People love it. We are like simple-minded children. If it sparkles, we like it. And that is going to go on. The thing that amazes me and amazed most of the fashion industry is that the American woman figured out that she could wear sequins and bling during the day as sportswear. She could wear it with her premium denim jeans. And so I think she's loving it, and she's not going to give it up. So watch out for new creative ways to keep sparkle going. Fashion, to those of us in this room, is a necessity, like air, right? It's not that way for everybody. Fashion is really a luxury to most people out there. And so I think it's just wonderful that we have the fast fashion companies delivering cheap, exciting fashion so that everybody can have the fun of being in fashion, playing the luxury game of fashion. So we have companies like H&M and Target, of course, and Walmart. These are two Walmart fashion ads. That seems like an oxymoron to start with. Walmart fashion ads? The thing that really amazes me is where I found them. One of them was in Vanity Fair. One of them was in Vogue. When Walmart is advertising in Vogue, the times are a-changin'. Where's luxury going next? Well, I think the next step for luxury is to discover, or maybe rediscover, the real world of natural luxury. Nature provides natural luxury. Nature is the next big fantasy. We are going to fantasize about walking in the forest, not just smelling the roses, but, feeling the leaves, listening to the waterfall, petting the moss. It's not going to really happen, but that's going to be the fantasy, and that's going to inspire a lot of fashion and a lot of art and a lot of music and a lot of architecture. We're already seeing it as a very, very important force in home decor. If you haven't been in Crate and Barrel lately, please go in right now, and you will see the wonderful amalgamation of all kinds of natural materials and zingy chartreuse as the accent color. Of course, nature has always been a provider of luxury for fashion. Like if you happen to have $10,000, you can buy this Ralph Lauren very, very luxurious natural skin bag. Okay, for most people, what it's going to boil down to is a fabric story. Natural luxury, the feel of cotton, silk, linen, maybe pure, maybe in blends, maybe totally synthetic, but it's got to feel natural. It's got to look natural, and one way it's going to look natural is to be a natural color. We are seeing a lot of natural color out there at the moment, and I think that's going to go on to be a strong core, continuing story that we're going to play fashion colors seasonally against for the next few years. Right now, the way to wear it, of course, is to wear several shades of natural neutral colors together the same way that we're wearing several shades of whites and creams together. Think about natural materials. Think about leather, hemp, raffia, feathers, wood, shells. Anything that nature provides, think about that as the new decoration, much newer than bling. I'm very, very interested in an incoming trend for sustainable style from renewable resources like bamboo and soy. You're going to see a lot of little companies springing up. Here's one that I like a lot at the moment. It's called Panda Snack, because pandas eat bamboo, and everything this company does is made out of bamboo material, which sounds like it would be awful. It sounds like who wants to wear, a wooden shirt, but bamboo is a very, very soft fiber, as is soy. So you're going to see more and more interest in fabrics made from sustainable, renewable materials. In fact, ecology and eco-awareness is a big growing force in our minds. This was kind of like a little trend a few years ago, and kind of, vegetarians and freaky people in California got very excited about it, and nobody in New York cared. But now, we're seeing a growing awareness and interest. And in fact, this is my favorite store in the world right now. It's a Walmart superstore in McKinney, Texas. And the interesting thing about it is that it's an experimental green Walmart store. There are windmills in the parking lot and solar panels on the roof to provide power to heat and air cool and run the cash registers inside the store. The flooring, some of the fixturing, and all the ceilings are made out of recycled materials. This is very experimental at the moment, and obviously it's a PR exercise from Walmart. The reason they're doing this is to try to correct some of the bad feelings so many of the consumers have about Walmart, with child labor and that kind of thing. So watch for more of this kind of activity. And it doesn't always have to be this serious. You can have some fun with this idea too. Here are some bangle bracelets that are made out of soda pop and beer cans. Those wonderful crocodile shoes look like they're made out of recycled styrofoam cups. I don't know if they really are. Those tote bags are woven out of used candy bar wrappers. So the next time you have a candy bar, save the wrapper, and you'll be fat as a pig, but you'll have a fabulous tote bag. Okay, now I have a question for you. Who do you think you are? I know. You think you're Jennifer Aniston some days, don't you? You think you're Angelina Jolie other days. Jessica Simpson. You think? I know you have no idea who you are. Well, that's okay some of the time, and it's okay for everybody your age, but I hope you're going to grow out of it, because I think our society is starting to grow out of our celebrity obsession. We're starting to get burnout, and lots of people are thinking they should get a life, their own. Now, the problem is, of course, that Jessica and Nick's life is kind of very exciting compared to reality. There's something in the middle, though. And I think we have to think about that. We are so obsessed with celebrities at the moment that I think it's time for us to wake up a little bit and realize that these people are entertaining, but they have no impact on our lives. In fact, they're slowing our lives down a lot, and they're slowing fashion creativity down a lot. Because every morning that you get up and look in your closet and think, what would Jennifer Aniston wear today? You're in trouble. Of course, some of them do impact on us. Like every time I see a picture of Nicole Richie, I want to buy her a hamburger. But that isn't going to really happen. So I got to get a grip. Of course, celebrities will continue to entertain us, especially when they misbehave, because that's the most fun, isn't it? And here's Tom Ford misbehaving. Did you see these pictures in W magazine a couple of issues ago? Portfolio of very, very kinky pictures. So kinky, I have no idea what was going on in these pictures. You know, I looked at them and looked at them. I know Tom, you know, he's funny. We spoke at a conference together at UCLA a few months ago, and he talked about the role of the designer, and he said, if you become a designer, you are often imprisoned by your image. And I asked him what he meant by that, and he said, oh, you know, he said, like Miuccia Prada is known as a fashion intellectual, and I'm known as a fashion slut. So he knows exactly what he's doing. I don't know what he's doing in these pictures, but it's kind of scary. But then I thought, well, maybe I'm just not sophisticated enough. Hey, I was born in Ohio. I lived in Europe for a long, long time, as Alice told you. But, you know, I couldn't figure out what was going on here. I certainly figured out what was going on with the Kate Moss scandal. I think we all did. Who was surprised? Supermodels take drugs. Oh boy, what a surprise. Okay, what surprised me was the fuss the media made, you know, and it was over so quickly. I remember Vanity Fair came out with a cover story that said, "Can Kate's career survive?" It had already survived by the time the magazine came out. I do have some bad news, though. I have some bad celebrity news for you. I don't know if you know this or not, but the old Paris is back. Now, this was really upsetting to me because I didn't know she went away. And I would have really enjoyed the few days when she was away. Sometimes I think Paris Hilton is stalking me. Everywhere I go, there's Paris Hilton. At every fashion show, every time I go to a restaurant, every time I open a magazine, there is Paris Hilton. I just wish someone would put her to sleep. But she's still here. Well, what is happening, though, as people are starting to get the idea that maybe they should get a life, is that fashion is waking up to the fact that there are people of many different ages out there, and they all love fashion. And a lot of them have been deprived of fashion lately because fashion for too long has been aimed at the mythical 18 to 34-year-old consumer. Every fashion company thinks that's who their consumer is. Well, it's not the truth. There are not that many 18 to 34-year-old consumers in America. And if every fashion company is trying to sell them, it means they are getting a smaller and smaller piece of the pie all the time. There are other people out there. Don't get me wrong, I love the mythical fashion customer. I just wish she really existed. There she is. That's who everybody in the fashion industry thinks they have as a customer. It's who everybody designs for, advertises to, creates magazines for. Look at her. She's beautiful, she's underweight, she's rich. She has no taste, she'll buy anything. Well, we're starting to wake up to the fact that there is someone else out there who might like to buy clothes. Don't get me wrong, you know, the young consumer is interesting, you know, but you know, that fabulous outfit by Marc, for Marc Jacobs, should only be worn by somebody young. If you are over 30 and you wear that, I'm going to laugh at you. There are plenty of nice clothes out there for women over 30. We haven't paid any attention to them lately in terms of fashion, but I think we're waking up. Young is fabulous. Don't get me wrong, you know, you guys have so much fun, you turn on a dime, you can wear anything and look great and have fun, and a sector of the industry is catering to you. But it's becoming a sector, a niche market, whereas the entire industry used to always look at you guys and think, well, whatever they are doing, our 50-year-old customer is going to want to do. Wrong. And she doesn't want to do what you're doing anymore. You do your own thing, and it's very, very important for your market. The fun thing about being young, of course, is that you are allowed to rebel. It's a rite of passage. You're supposed to break the rules. But it's kind of boring to those of us who've watched generation after generation do the same thing. Certainly, the rebellious years are an important part of fashion, but it's where the fads happen very quickly. That stuff over there on the right, those skulls that, you know, if they look new to you, sorry, you're not keeping up. Those pictures were taken almost 30 months ago in East Berlin by our trend analyst who first spotted the trend there, and she said, watch out, this is going to happen, this is going to happen. And I thought, yeah, watch. Well, she was right. And it should, and it's fabulous. But one of the problems is that a lot of people haven't yet figured out that a young fad can't be moved up market for everybody. It doesn't work. It cannot become designer merchandise. Like, I think it's ridiculous that Ralph Lauren made a pair of men's evening slippers that cost $750. Even if you prorate it, that's, over $300 a foot, and expected to sell them. This belongs in that young market, and we shouldn't be trying. So, that's the difference. Some things do move, like the color combination that's retailing like mad in the young men's arena right now, black, white, and red, or black, white, and hot pink, or black, white, and yellow. Now that you can take and move around, and it works for everybody. Let's talk about growing up and growing old. I am obsessed with growing old because I am so bloody old. You can be the first people to wish me happy birthday. It's my birthday next week, and I will be 65 years old. Oh, it's so scary, I know. But I'll tell you something. When my father was 65 years old, he did not wear these pants and these shoes, or this shirt. It's big news that the boomers are turning 60. I don't know why this is big news, because it was big news 10 years ago when the boomers turned 50, So we figured out 10 years later. I mean, I am a professional forecaster, so I can tell you with assurance, 10 years from now, the media is going to be very excited that the boomers are turning 70, because they're going to be a different kind of 70, and that's the whole point, and that's what the fashion industry is finally waking up to, that the boomers are great consumers. But they haven't been buying fashion because there hasn't been any fashion for them, because they can't dress like Britney Spears. Okay? So grown-up fashion means we will get their money, and they have more money than anybody. The boomers control $7 trillion of the American economy, more than any other group ever has in history. They are the richest people this planet has ever known, and the fashion industry has been ignoring them, but it's waking up. Now, okay, on the subject of growing old, not that this concerns you, but it's going to when you move into the fashion industry, because not all of you are going to work for companies that catered only to the young, so you have to know. There are 3 ways to grow old. You can either do nothing about it and fall apart. That's no longer an option in America. You can grow old the way Catherine Deneuve, the French actress here, is growing old. A little nipping, a little tucking, a little injecting, a whole lot of Photoshop retouching on your pictures. That's growing old gracefully today. Or you can scream, fight, and, yell. We shouldn't laugh at this nice little old lady. She's 60 years old. Isn't she cute? Every time I see a picture of Cher, I think of that terrible joke. You all know it, but I have to tell you again anyway. When the world comes to an end, there are only going to be 3 things that survive on the planet: cockroaches, styrofoam cups, and Cher. Because she's all plastic. The great thing about the industry waking up is that we're starting to wake up to the fact that sophisticated style is part of fashion. For a long time, you had to be cool, you had to be sexy, you had to be flashy to be in fashion. Well, you still can be all that stuff if you want to be, but you're also now allowed to be sophisticated. That's one reason that we're seeing an interest in soft, flattering color so important, because black makes you look thinner, but it also makes you look older. So these soft colors appeal to people of a certain age, and it's one reason that you saw so many colors like this at the Academy Awards last night, wearing flesh-colored, cosmetic-colored, powder-colored, metallic flesh colors. It's like getting an instant facelift. So watch out for these colors to continue very, very strongly, all of these wonderful nude skin shades. Okay, what's the next big thing? If you were tested on this, and maybe we should give you a test on this, what would you say in one word is the next big thing? Well, I'm kind of copping out here, because I think the next big thing is change. And interestingly enough, it's been my experience in the fashion industry that many people, even in this industry, are afraid of change. And you would think that anybody who's in fashion must love change, but a lot of people don't. They're frightened by it. Let's look at the changes we can't stop, because they are going to happen. Okay, we're going to see more techno gadgets. That is a given. What interests me, and what I think we have to be aware of, is that there is going to be a marriage between technology and fashion, and that's going to be the next big thing. We're coming out of centuries of traditional design, and we're moving into technology and science. Science and fashion are going to get together. We're going to see it happen. You know, in April, Levi's is coming out with the iPod jean. We already have some experimental things that mix technology and fashion together. How many of you bought fabulous cases for your iPods? The people who manage to find a way to make those kind of marriages are the ones who are going to get rich, until we end up looking like this. I think we are on the road to becoming cyborgs, and I think it's going to be real exciting. Already, of course, there are so many elements of science involved with fashion. Technological textiles. The industry doesn't make enough noise about that, and we really need to. Things like, you know, fabrics made out of bamboo. It should be more than just a hang tag. You know, something that stretches, something that wicks, something that breathes, something that's comfortable, something that washes and dries itself. JCPenney just introduced a man's business suit that really does just get thrown into the washer and dryer and come out looking like it's been dry cleaned. This is important news, and hardly anybody knows about it. Okay? One place that technology and science really always seems to be exciting is in footwear. Have you noticed? Like, there's shoes of the future that we're walking around in. You know, if only the clothes would catch up to that. Okay? But as we embrace this technology that we have no choice about, we're going to want reminders that we are human beings, that we have human hearts and human hands. So there will be this backlash counter movement always toward arts and crafts and things that are made by human beings. Even though we won't have time to make them, they're going to be made by someone in China or Taiwan, of course, but we're going to gravitate toward them because they will remind us of our own humanity. And what's really next is the new fashion frontier, and you already know about it, and boy, is it important. This is not where it's at anymore. You should all be in Beijing right now, because that's the next place. So important, because the next century is going to belong to China, especially as far as fashion is concerned. I'm not just talking about manufacturing, everybody knows that. What I'm talking about is the impact that the Chinese consumer is going to have on fashion, simply because there are so many of them, and they are going to have so much money, and right now they are a giant, a sleeping giant that is awakening to so much power because the numbers are so vast. Think about this. I'm bad at statistics and bad at numbers, and you probably are too, or you wouldn't be creative. But listen to this one and you'll get it. Right now in China, there are more students studying English than there are people who speak English in all of North America and Europe combined. That's overwhelming. So think about it. There are all these people. Manufacturing is exploding in Asia, of course, but all of these people who are getting jobs in the factories are going to be the next fashion consumers, and they're going to be the ones who call the shots. I watched this happen once before in my lifetime. Big advantage to be as old as I am. You've lived through fashion history. In the 80s, when the oil money made the Middle East so influential, that was the beginning of show-off luxury. Oil money made Ivana Trump possible as a fashion icon. It was flashy, almost vulgar, over the top. Well, we are going to see this happen now, not flashy and vulgar, but we're going to see the Chinese consumer embrace Western fashion, but bring to Western fashion a sensitivity, a tradition in design and culture and color that will be so exciting that it's going to be revolutionary in terms of fashion. See, I get very excited about this stuff. You have to get excited about this stuff, okay? Some changes, may be slower than others. I'm sure eventually we're going to see a woman in the White House, but right now, of course, she only exists on television. So some changes we have to be patient about. As I said at the beginning, it's all about timing. And I think my timing to come and talk to you is now over. So thank you very, very much for allowing me to visit with you. Is there time for some questions? Okay. Okay. We do have some time to field a couple of questions. So, if you're curious about anything I'm talking about or curious about anything in general, yes, the Doneger Group does have an internship program, so if you want to come and work for Doneger, I'm in the color and trend forecasting division, which is only a little piece of the company, by the way, so there are lots of different opportunities. People often ask me how I got started as a fashion forecaster, and I have to tell you that I was simply born lucky. Genetically lucky, in fact, because my grandmother, seriously, was a gypsy fortune teller. So I think there's something in my DNA about looking into the future. I also have to tell you a funny thing. Once a few years ago, I issued a forecast that happened to be right on for one of my clients, and she called me up and surprised me by telling me she thought I had the biggest crystal balls on 7th Avenue. Seriously, though, I started in a small town in Ohio working in a department store that was the best education I can imagine because I was allowed to be a buyer for a while. I was a fashion coordinator for a while. I became a fashion illustrator there before I moved to Europe and specialized in illustration. Fashion illustration is so important. I hope you can all draw. If you can't, learn to draw because it's the way you can communicate your original ideas. I find it so frustrating now when I visit design studios of some very, very important designers, and they are planning next season, and the way they are doing it is looking at vintage clothing and samples that they have bought in Europe instead of being able to communicate visually. Any questions now? Yes. Okay, we work with scores of retailers like Harvey Nichols and Selfridges in London, many stores in South Africa, and stores in Asia, in Shanghai. It's hard for me to come up with them off the top of my head, to be honest with you, because we work with about 1,000 clients worldwide. Yes? Okay, well, I think they're just wrong, because I think we have this urge to be very flamboyant, and I think you kind of have to think logically but illogically that, all right, if we're going to be minimal but still want to be a standout, how is that going to happen? So, I think that's what gives me confidence in that. I mean, right now, okay, here's a good example of how you have to think about things. Premium denim is now, the beginning and the end of fashion for so many people, and and for the last 6 months, I've been telling the industry that premium denim is at saturation point and is going to crash and burn. And denim will not go away ever, of course, but the next denim is going to be skin tight, skinny, and dark. And it's not going to make as much money as premium denim did for the denim industry. And so what we're thinking about also is, okay, if we've saturated jeans, then the interest is going to be at the top of the body, like very shrunken jeans jackets are now, like on turning up on a lot of cool people. And so I think, sometimes you have to apply that kind of logic to, the swing of the pendulum. I remember the last time minimalism was in and everybody thought it was going to go on forever. I had a gut feeling that very frilly ruffly was going to happen. And it was very hard to convince people that, the opposite of what is going to be the norm will become the next thing. I think as you're thinking about fashion forecasting and trend planning, you always have to look for the little idea that's on the edge of the big idea, because that's the one that's going to grow. Yes? Okay, I think that the future of the trend forecasting business is interesting to me because it has changed so much just in the time I've been involved in it. I started the trend forecasting business. I have to be honest with you. I was one of the first trend forecasters because there was not such a thing as trends when I was young. Fashion, what we would call trends now, was all about silhouette and what they called line. And it was invented by very creative designers in Paris in the haute couture world, and it rippled out like clockwork. 18 months later, it was universal in fashion. And then as the boomers, the young people, started to become teenagers, they were very hungry for a lot of change, and things started moving more and more quickly. And fashion started coming from the streets and the boutiques, and it wasn't so much about the art of fashion, it really was about the fun of change. And in the 70s, the trends came like that out of Europe. And I was involved in reporting those trends from Europe at that time to American manufacturers. And you know the rag trade, they're highly competitive. So the first thing they started saying was, don't just tell me what's happening now, tell me what's going to happen next. And that was really what it was about for a long time. And some trend forecasters are still caught in that kind of thinking. It was like, oh, it's Eskimo this season, and it's going to be the 40s next season, and it's going to be space age next season. Well, that's not how it works anymore. Now the trends really are about reflecting the changes in lifestyle, economics, politics, and the global scenario. So the trends now are much more business-oriented than they used to be. I never thought I would be as fascinated by the business aspects of it as I am now, and that really is what trending that makes a lot of money has become about. There are still plenty of people producing cute little books with swatches that don't mean anything. So I think the trends now are much more about how to make money and grow a business. It sounds like it's not as exciting, but believe me, it is. Anybody else? Yes?
I'm wondering, in your opinion, do you think there is any opportunity for any new silhouettes to be invented? Because many times I hear that, oh, that's a Balenciaga, that's a Charles James. We don't see anything new, we don't see anything fresh, we just see fresh. So I'm wondering, in your opinion, do you think anything new, any new silhouettes going to be invented?
No. I think the reason I can say that at this moment is that we've things speeded up so much in the last half of the 20th century that we virtually went in and out, up and down, puffed and tight so quickly that I think we went as far as we could. The last new silhouette was really because of Lycra. I mean, up to that point, we never had skin tight because it had to be custom tailored to your body. Lycra made it possible for everything to be skin tight. I think that was the final frontier of silhouette. I think the newness, and I think there's still going to be newness, is going to come from the marriage of technology, all kinds of changes that will be exciting. But boy, I have to be honest with you. I haven't seen anything that I thought was new since about 1965. Because in the 60s, there truly were things that we hadn't ever seen before. That's so hard, to tell your generation because you have seen everything and everything is available. That's something that I think makes fashion different today because it's so segmented that what is new for one segment of the market is very old for another segment and never going to happen for another segment. And there used to be a fashion mainstream, and that doesn't exist anymore. I would love to see something new. I just can't imagine what it could be, but I'm not a scientist. I can design as well as anybody. Make the sleeve bigger, smaller, hems up and down. It's all been done. Something is going to come out of a laboratory that I think is going to change everything. I think spray-on apparel is going to be the next big thing, but I mean, who could imagine it, Anybody else? Okay, thank you very much. Okay.